I opened the door to the private dining room, and there was James Taylor and his wife waiting to have lunch with me. I call this story Lunch with Sweet Baby James. The year was 2004. It was late in the year, after the re-election of George W. Bush, starting his second term. The war in Iraq had been raging for 2 years. I was in New York, in Midtown New York, working for U.S. Trust Company as the head of investment management. U.S. Trust Company was the first private trust company built in the U.S., launched in the 1850s. U.S. Trust served some of the great wealth families of the New York area during the Gilded Age: Rockefellers, Astors, Vanderbilts. The setting in U.S. Trust, this is the headquarters of U.S. Trust Company in Midtown. Think polished wood, white marble, thick carpets, heavy drapes. It reeked of the uber wealthy and catering to those types of clients. The company had recently been sold to the Charles Schwab Corporation and had a new CEO and chief operating officer who both had been long-term veteran executives of the banking empire of Citigroup. The chief operating officer, Jim, was a peer of mine on the executive committee, and Jim was a really serious, demanding, hard-boiled executive. One morning, it's late morning, I'm in my office, and I'm just running through my tasks of the day, and my fun executive assistant, Angela, comes in, and her eyes are wide, and she's kind of vibrating a bit, and it's clear that she's got something newsworthy to tell me. She reminds me that there are a number of celebrities who are clients of U.S. Trust. But the issue with celebrities is that they almost never come into the offices of U.S. Trust Company. No, they delegate the management of their money to their managers. In this case, a celebrity, one of those who had never been in to the office before, had apparently just called his relationship officer and said that he and his wife wanted to come in, have lunch, and meet with the chief investment officer. And this set the whole floor really abuzz, because this executive had never done this before, had never come in. This was very surprising. Didn't know what this was about. And so I was excited, one, because this is a big celebrity, but much more importantly, James Taylor was a huge favorite musician of mine, and this was James and his wife who were coming in to have lunch. So I put on my suit jacket and headed out of my office to go walk over to the series of private dining rooms that U.S. Trust had in its headquarters for this purpose of entertaining clients. The private dining rooms had a variety of sizes, but on my way over there, I got intercepted by Jim, the chief operating officer, and Jim was displaying a personality that I'd never seen before. Jim was literally bouncing off the floor. He was so excited. He's like, "Tim, I love James Taylor. I'm such a huge fan." He's like, "I need to meet him." And I'm like, I'm thinking, oh God, this is, and it seemed like Jim was was probing me to gain a reaction as to whether I thought that would be a good idea or not. And I thought it was a horrible idea. The idea that another executive who never sees clients, he's a operations guy, would kind of come into that kind of a private meeting just to fawn over a celebrity client of ours. Ugh, bad idea. Anyhow, I'm like, Jim, I can't deal with this. I gotta go. So I just kind of blew right by him. I get over to the room and I open up the door and here was James Taylor and his wife. The setting was, this was one of the smaller private dining rooms, had a kind of an oval polished wood table, could seat maybe six. James and his wife were on one side with their backs to the windows. The relationship officer, she was sitting on the opposite side, on the other side of the table, so she could face James and his wife. And then there was a place setting for me at the head of the table. And the thought occurred to me that I was seeing some kind of an odd turntable kind of event. It felt a little bit disorienting in a way because for years I had gone to musical concerts and had been part of the audience. And James, as an example, would be the performer. In this situation, James and his wife asked to come in and asked to hear from me. They were more in the role of audience, and I was more in the role of performer. It was a little, yeah, it was a little bit disconcerting, but okay, I'm going with it. So I go in, they stand up, we shake hands. James is polite, but he's very reserved. I notice that he and his wife are both casually dressed. That's what I would have expected from James Taylor, just not knowing them before, but just from his style and music and all that, and would have been surprised if he was otherwise. His wife, on the other hand, was couldn't have been more friendly. She was very, very open and smiling, and so we all sit down, and the relationship officer introduces herself and then introduces me, and says, this is Tim Leach. He's our chief investment officer. And then she stops, and it kind of caught me, because classically, in almost all situations, and I'd been in a lot where I had come in to meet a client of a wealth management firm like this, and the typical opening, more of an icebreaker, would be to have me or one of my people spend a few minutes talking about my view of the economy and the investment markets, to kind of set the stage, and then let the clients ask more specific questions about what that they may have, right, about something, what's going on, or whatever. But in this case, she didn't say anything, and so it dawned on me that this luncheon meeting came up with no notice, and there must not have been any agenda put forward as to what they wanted to achieve out of this meeting. So she just simply turned it over to me. And so I kind of colored it in a little further. I said, in my role, I have responsibility for all aspects of investment management across all asset classes. And I delve in a lot of economics as a part of what I do. So I'd be happy to talk about anything that you would like to talk about, that you're interested in, concerned about, whatever. I looked first to James, and because I thought, this may have been an agenda of his, but he was kind of a blank slate. Clearly, this was not his meeting. This was not his impetus, all right, to be here. So I glanced then and turned over to his wife, and she was, yes, this was her meeting. Yeah, she was the one who had passion to get into something, and so she was the driver. Okay, fine. so so but she starts in a surprising way. She says, Mr. Leach, I want you to know that neither James nor I support this president in any way. We didn't support him. We don't support him now. We don't support or agree with any of the actions that he's doing. And it was a very unusual way for a client to express. In that kind of a direct statement about her, their political view, their worldview to a certain extent, and so I had to kind of take a step back and think, well, where's this coming from? And it dawned on me quickly that in the environment that this lunch was being held in the heart of U.S. Trust Company, venerable wealth management business, it reeked of conservatism, the whole environment. And when I thought about me, right, the guy that they had asked to speak to, tall, white guy, Aryan looking, in a suit, white shirt, tie, Wall Street executive. I have to believe that their assumption going into this is that I too am conservative, Republican, and that they wanted to differentiate between where they were coming from versus maybe how I kind of looked at the world or something. And I wanted to share with them. I wanted to let them know that I understood. And so to her statement, I just simply said, I share your views. But I said that in such a kind of a parsed way, in part because professionally I was kind of playing with fire a bit. My world, the world of U.S. Trust Company, of investment management, of capital markets, generally was a conservative world. My peers across the industry, the vast majority of chief investment officers are conservative. I'm the outlier. The majority of the investment professionals under me are conservative. The other executives, the CEO, no doubt, are all conservative of U.S. Trust Company. and frankly, my employees and my co-executives, they probably also assume that their chief investment officer is of the same tribe. So I was, there was a little bit of apprehension, but I felt it was much more important to be open and candid, and so I shared that with Mrs. Taylor, and therefore with James also, and so she continued and she said, we are very concerned that this president, through his policies and actions, is going to ruin the U.S. economy. The U.S. economy is likely to crater, and with it, the investment markets are going to implode. They were envisioning death and destruction from a financial point of view. Clearly, it seemed that she was very disappointed by the recent re-election of George W. Bush, and dismayed of the idea of another 4 years of this type of administration going forward. but clearly also very insecure financially, and I really appreciated that. And so, without going into all the detail of what our discussion was, but just to kind of hit the high notes, what I told them is that I appreciated their concerns, and that but we needed to separate between how we emotionally feel about the decisions that President Bush was taking and had taken, um, and instead analyze what the likely reaction is and will be from the economy and the investment markets to his actions. And I said, from that point of view, some of the biggest things that have occurred, typical to most Republican administrations, is that they have cut income taxes massively. Businesses love that. And so do rich people. The rich get richer, right, with less taxes. So a lot of happiness over and from a reaction on those sides. And at the same time, as you're cutting taxes, Bush launched a war in Iraq. Setting aside how you feel about that, a war and that kind of spending of billions and billions of dollars taken with cuts of taxes financially is stimulative to the economy as well as then reflected in investment markets in general. And so I said, my conclusion is that the economy and the U.S. markets, at least over the next couple of years, I don't see some horrific risk that you should be worried about from that point of view, while understanding the feelings about the impact of what his actions are having on ordinary Americans. Our conversation, I thought was a good conversation during our lunch, and as we concluded our lunch and concluded the conversation, Mrs. Taylor thanked me for being so candid in this conversation. She seemed to incorporate my conclusions and buy into the conclusions as I kind of stated them, while being, no doubt, kind of having mixed feelings about the impact on society, while understanding that the investment markets may actually do okay. We shook hands again. James, thanked me for the lunch and discussion, and but he seemed to be kind of relieved to be leaving this environment, and I appreciated that. So here we are, 20 plus years later, and as I've been spending some time reliving this episode, my heart went out and kind of has been going out to James Taylor, feeling for him right in that situation. My sense is that James, was just kind of a gentle soul who just wanted to create his beautiful music and not have to deal with all of these other world kinds of things that were out there. And so as I kind of went through that whole process, one of his songs, one of my favorite of his songs, kind of worked its way, into my head. And when this old world starts a getting you down, and people are just too much for me to take. Anyhow, James, wherever you are, I hope that you're able to continue to find your way up to your roof. Thank you very much.